everyone, and welcome to episode 523 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing super well, too, but we got another co-host in Krim. Good morning, Krim. How you doing today?
I'm doing quite all right myself. Excited to talk about a few of the topics we're talking about today.
Yeah, this should be an interesting one. So we're going to be bouncing around a little bit. We got Etherdrift out. Want to talk about the impact of it on Standard and Modern. We have some Commander finance news and banlist news, thanks to the bracket announcement last week. We also forgot to talk about the announcement of a Magic movie, so we're going to be bouncing around to topics like that. Before we get into it, though, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, you can skip them with Card Conduit. You can use their curated service where you send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use this sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. Either way, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, it's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Magic, and let's start with, I guess, the biggest news, which is the release of Etherdrift. So Etherdrift is officially out. It's been out for about a week now, digitally at least. It's out in paper as well. And I'm very curious what you guys think of the impact of this set. Let's start with Standard. And I know, Richard, you've been playing some Limited too. So if you got some Limited advice, you can sneak that in. But Krim, what do you think about the impact of Etherdrift on Standard? We got a Pro Tour coming up this weekend, so these are the early results. We'll know more once we see what the pros end up doing. But what do you think of the impact of the set on Standard so far?
So we talked about this, and, all of us a little behind the scenes, if hey, will we see any new deck archetypes? I thought no, but I guess that's wrong. Because one of the top decks of the meta is Gruul, but not Gruul like, oh, I'm going to just play mono red with a few other things added to it. I'm talking Gruul like Draconautics Engineer. We've got, it's like Gruul Delirium Aggro, because we've also got, as I had mentioned like last week, I believe, we kind of have the pseudo Vengevine Deathmist Raptor effect, but for exhaust. Well, Afterburner Expert, I guess, is good enough to be a play set in some of the Gruul aggro decks that I've seen so far. And that is interesting. This is, of course, is all from a tournament that went down, I believe, in the Japan Standard Cup for Etherdrift. So as of right now, this deck that I'm looking at is almost loaded. Like absolutely loaded with Etherdrift between that, Dredger's Insight. So at least from that deck. And this is just early peak at the meta. So there's still a lot of time to come. Maybe this deck is a meme and doesn't exist in a week or two. But at the point of this filming, that's a possibility. And on top of that, some of those new enchantments we had talked about, like the Edict one went into Demir Bounce.
Yes, it did.
Yes,
Hooray for that.
Yeah, we got a few of those. Turns out, by the way, Demir Bounce got some new tools. It was really hurting. So naturally they gave it more. And lastly, there's Demir Midrange. And I don't mean like bounce. I mean actual mid-range. And we're seeing 4 Oil Deep Gear Hulks in, again, that Etherdrift Standard Cup in Japan. So there's a lot.
I will say, if you go to the
small
metagame
Japanese
page,
tournament.
that is infamous small Japanese tournament. I will say, if you go to the metagame page, the Gruul list with Draconautics Engineer, it shows up under Gruul aggro, but there's like one deck that's kind of like that, or two, and then if you click on the rest of them, they're very more traditional, kind of like play a bunch of mice decks. So we'll see if that actually takes off is a meta deck. I've been playing a little bit. I'm going to do a video of it, and it actually feels kind of like Vengevine when you get Afterburn Expert going, and it's a great Soul Cauldron deck, and Soul Cauldron is just like such a ridiculously strong card in the right deck. So that deck is really interesting. I will say, overall, I'm feeling a little disappointed with the impact, though. If you just look at like standard league results or whatever, it's kind of sad to see, like, when you see new cards being played, it's really basically Esper Bounce getting some upgrades, and then occasionally you see like a Riptide Gearhulk in Domain, or you see the Oil Deep Gearhulk in a Dimir deck, but it seems like overall not a huge immediate impact from the set. Richard, what do you think? Is this set a flop? Is it going to change once we get to this Pro Tour and we're going to see like a bunch of new stuff coming out from the pros this weekend?
Yeah, the Japanese people in that tournament were cooking. I'll tell you who's not cooking: Magic Online players. If you look at all like the stats, like there are new cards being played. Unfortunately, they all go into Esper Self Bounce, and it's Adakar Waste, Caves of Koilos, Underground River, which are the Pain Lands, and then Grim Bauble, which is the artifact that disfigures.
Disfigures, yeah.
And other than that, like it's kind of the same old, and you have like lists that are just like in the top 8 that literally have 0 Etherdrift cards, right? And then, you know, if they do play an Etherdrift card, it's like something that is not impactful, like maybe like a Ride's End or something, like, you know, like a kind of like a sideboard or like generic removal spot. So I would say overall, this set is a flop. Like you're not, well, so far, right? Pro Tour is coming up, but you're not seeing like any decks centered around the new mechanics. And then even the cards that are seeing play in existing archetypes, they're like largely replaceable, and they're giving you like, you know, 0.5% more or something because your mana base is better rather than, you know, fundamentally changing it. Having said that, though, it is super early. We have a Pro Tour coming up.
Yep.
So maybe everyone's saving the sauce for that. But my intuition is no. Maybe there's like a weird combo deck that comes out of nowhere. But my guess is like it's just gonna be mid-range piles, and they're all gonna kind of look the same, or like temple piles or whatever. I don't know.
I mean,
You think Hazred or something's gonna bust in there and be like, yeah, this is how you build aggro. This is how you build max speed. Like I don't see. I don't see that coming in, right? You see, like, there's gonna be a vehicles deck. Like, I just can't see that happening, right? Like, I don't know.
I mean, am I know this is specifically how I view new sets, because I think Seth and I had this discussion, but I don't expect the new set to just be all Etherdrift, right? I think I expect marginal change, just a few cards here and there, but to even see people trying to cook like that, I like it. But we are also omitting the Insidious Roots deck, right? That card got pushed up to a few tiers with the release of Etherdrift, though. Between Molt Tender, you also have somebody who surprisingly, you know, is cooking on MTGO, because normally MTGO doesn't cook, I guess.
They're sweaty. They don't have time to cook. They need to win.
I mean, there is a 4-color Insidious Roots deck. It's got Ketramos, the new Dawn, in there. It's got Molt Tender, as we had mentioned, and it's got a Dredger's Insight here and there. That deck looks like it's kind of kicking up a few tiers. I've seen a lot of that deck.
Yeah,
So,
it looks
I don't know.
really cool if your graveyard doesn't get locked down. That's the big challenge for that deck. If your graveyard gets locked down, it gets very sad. But if you actually have an open graveyard, the deck can do some crazy things. It can do some really, really strong stuff. I don't know. What do you guys think? So we're going into this Pro Tour, and I kind of have a fear that it's going to be really, really heavily that self-bounce decks, like some huge meta percentage, because not only are those decks really good, but that also just feels like the kind of decks that the pros like to play, because you get to outplay people and you do all these sneaky, like tricky, oh, look, I know how this deck works, I can do this and it. Like, it's one of those decks, right? So do you think we're going to see like 50% of the meta or something absurd be the self-bounce decks, or am I worrying about nothing? Because I kind of have a worry that it's just going to be way too heavily played. But what do you guys think with the Pro Tour coming up?
I mean, there's no delusion here, right? That bounce deck is the best deck in format. So as long as best deck in format is that, people are like pros are going to want to play that, right? So
here's the problem, right? You're like, 25% of the metagame is Dimir self bounce. That's not bad. 25% is Esper bounce. 25% is Dimir mid range, right? And you're like, and then, you know, there's gonna be like Esper wizards in there or something, because there's like 3 wizards, but it's really just self bounce as well. So I think, I don't know. I hope it's the verse. I hope something happens, and I'm worried about Seth. Like, whenever there's a tempo deck, the pros are just waiting. Like, everyone has this thing. They're like, oh, Delver? Oh, yeah, Vapor Snag? Like, let's go. Like, I don't know why we're so obsessed about this, but yeah. So I do hope the Roots deck or something is real, so it actually gives incentive to play something new. But, my fear is it's just Domain. It's just Bounce. And then you have like maybe 3 variations of bounce going on or something. Like, I think that would make it bad. So if there is a lot of bounce, I hope it's just one archetype and it's, 30% and the rest of the field is diverse. And it's not like actually 60%, but the color combinations as you try to out meta the other bounce decks, Like, I hope it's not that.
I don't know how real it is, but I did see some, some RCQ posts and whatnot, and some winners from the past weekend. And I think a blue-white control list surfaced, and it won, and it beat Esper Pixie, all of that stuff. And it plays the new Gearhulk, the blue-white one. So I don't know if that's the answer, but it is cool to see that blue-white Gearhulk and some things are.
Was that
picking
you,
up here,
Krim?
so.
Did you grind?
No.
That does sound like
No,
whole weekend just to add this result.
I wish.
I've seen there's also been some control decks that are built around Monument to Endurance. I don't know if you've seen any of those that look really cool, where it's like Monument of Endurance and Artist Talent. So whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you loot, and then you just like play control stuff and eventually like stick those pieces and just burn your opponent out of the game. So those look really cool. I'm actually tempted to do some controlling just to try out that deck because it does look really fun. So maybe we'll see something develop at the Pro Tour. Maybe we'll see a combo deck. I think that's the best hope, is someone like broke Radiant Lotus or broke like one of these, crazy combo decks. It could happen, right? Like, the odds are not high, but it's possible.
They're like 4 spell pierce. What's up, bro?
Yeah, that is also
like,
true.
I'm chucking your entire hand and I'm holding a spell pierce at the same time. That's what's rough about tempo being best, right? Like, it kind of just inherently has protection against combo. It just might be something like Mice or something mono red that takes it down, where they're just way faster than the bounce, and the bouncing is not helping. But yeah, spell pierce kind of dampers my combo expectations, unless you can combo through a spell pierce somehow, like, quite easily. Maybe you can, I don't know.
Radiant Lotus makes so much mana. What do I care about spell pierce? I'll pay the 2. No worries.
Wait, what does Lotus cost?
worries.
Like 5?
You mean the 6
6.
mana
It costs
Radiant
6,
Lotus?
yeah.
6?
I mean,
Okay,
unless
you wait till 8 mana and you play around the spell pierce. We got it. We got it.
All right, so let's move on from Standard. We'll know more after the Pro Tour this weekend. We also have a surprise topic coming up that wasn't on our list, but literally just happened as we're doing this, and I got to see Richard's reaction. But before we get to that, we got to wrap up Etherdrift, because there's some Modern news too. So in Modern, there's really 2 cards that I would say actually have mattered from the set, which is Catramos and Udon. Has taken over in any Orzhov deck is playing Catramos now. The white-black Sewers deck or Orzhov Sewers deck, that's the biggest one. But it's also posted finishes in like Domain decks, some other just like weird one-off brews. So that's really proven itself so far to be a staple. It also like doubled in price this week, probably because of all the Modern play. It shot up to like $50 now. The other one is the 1-mana Shark, the Marauding Mako, which is showing up in all the Hollow One decks. It's an Asmore Food deck. So that's actually not bad for Modern, right? Like, the bar for Modern for me is much higher than Standard. When a new set comes out, I want to see it really shake up Standard. But in Modern, if you get like 2 or 3 legit cards out of the set, that's actually not a bad rate. So what do you guys think of those cards in Modern? Do they have staying power, Richard or Krim?
That's the old rate, right? Like, every now and then you might get 1 or 2 cards into the format, which is great. I'm not surprised that Mako made its way there, because those counters being permanent made it so much better than whatever that old 1-drop was.
Flameblade Adept, yeah.
Flameblade Adept. Yeah, there it is. There's the name. That's so much better than that card, which was temporary. So naturally, the power creep version would just make its way there. I'm curious to see if it stays, because that new, I don't know, that new combo, right? Not the new combo, but the consistency of the grinding station combo is wild. So
yeah.
I have seen nothing but that.
I mean, that deck's gonna end up getting banned at some point. I'm pretty confident at this point that sooner or later someone's gonna end up having to ban that deck, and then we'll see what goes from there. But yeah, that deck is really, really good right now. Anyway, any thoughts on Modern, Richard, before we move on to our surprise topic?
No, it sounds more exciting than standard. More
Thanks.
changes.
It is. Actually might be more of a shakeup in Modern somehow, as weird as that sounds. All right, so Richard, I gotta get your reaction to this. So we just got, literally as we're recording this podcast at like noon on Monday, they just put up the first spoilers from Final Fantasy. We got the 4 face commanders from the Final Fantasy set. So these are not standard legal. They're part of the Commander Precon. I don't know these characters, but I want to read the cards and see what you guys think of them. So Commander number 1, Terra, Herald of Hope. It's a 3-mana Mardu 3/3 human wizard warrior. It's a legend, of course. It has Trance. At the beginning of combat on your turn, mill 2 cards. It gains flying until end of turn. And then when Terra deals combat damage to a player, you can pay 2. When you do, return target creature card with power 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tab. So Terra. Is Terra an iconic Final Fantasy character? Who's Terra, Richard? Dude, is it like a famous character?
/3.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why she looks like Wonder Woman with this outfit, but yeah.
She kind of does.
This is probably very good, right? You just smack someone and then you reanimate a 3 or less onto the battlefield tapped.
It's interesting that it's
Human Wizard Warrior, though. That's weird.
Quite the type line. It's interesting that it's
type.
power 3 or less rather than mana value. That allows for some shenanigans, right? Where you can potentially be reanimating something that's like 8 mana but has really low power. So I think there might be some cool shenanigans. Kind of reminds me of like Alicia or something, like the like recurrent reanimation. Plus it fills your graveyard. What do you think of this one, Krim? Seems like a pretty sweet Mardu commander.
I mean, right now I am very curious because all right. So first off, Richard, I'm very real with you. I have when I started playing Final Fantasy.
Don't tell me you've never played 3/6. Disgusting.
I have not played 3.
Oh, disgusting.
Look, all right. I started at 7. At 7.
Okay, that's reasonable because you're a youngin. You're a youngin. Okay,
yeah.
Reasonable.
I that was the first Final Fantasy I played because I got it on PlayStation 1. Right. So I don't know what the reference to Terra is. I know Kefka because I raided in 14 and I saw Kefka. So I know, really weird. But yeah, Trance at the beginning of combat, your turn, build 2 cards. Are we getting some
yeah, so you can attack with it. Yeah, even through blockers.
Yeah. This is an interesting self-mill, and on top of that, like, you know, kind of like a small ball reanimator, maybe, because I mean power 3 or less. This seems interesting. I don't know what it's like flavor-wise, but I can tell you that I'm excited to like try this commander out because it is a new Mardu commander. As in, like, I don't really see many Mardu. Are there any Mardu commanders that kind of do this? That also have a built-in self-mill?
No, it's kind of like part of Alicia, I think, who smiles at death, like the OG Alicia. Similar to that, but Alicia also doesn't do the self-mill thing. So I think if you want to do like the reanimation thing, it's better. Plus, Alicia only reanimates power 2 or less, so you get a little power boost on it too. I feel like this will be a relatively powerful Mardu or popular Mardu commander. It seems pretty neat.
I want to call attention to the set logo.
Like, I was going to ask, what
is it a chicken?
It is.
Oh, that's not a chicken.
Wait, did Krim just ask if it's a chicken? What was it?
No. That's
okay, because he was about to lose his. He was about to lose his anime card.
No, okay, come on. I know what a chocobo is. Get out of here.
I know you played 14. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
It's so much better than the trash. That's the flag from Etherdrift. I like Chef's Kiss. This is the best set logo I've ever seen.
It looks so good.
So good.
All right, we got new commander number 2. We're moving into Naya for Cloud X Soldier. So a 5 mana, including a red, a green, and a white, for a 4/4 legendary human soldier mercenary with haste. When it enters, you get to attach 1 target equipment you control to it, and when it attacks, you draw a card for each equipped attacking creature you control. And then if it has power 7 or greater, you make 2 treasure tokens. So kind of Voltron-y. I don't know. What about Cloud, Richard? How important is Cloud to
this card sucks.
It's kind of Voltron-y.
But it's so bad. Like 5 mana, 4/4. You just attach 1 thing and you smack.
It does
and draw a card or 2.
Put a Colossus Hammer on it and smack them and make treasures. I mean, I don't think it's like busted. We've seen a lot of commanders that are kind of similar.
You just
Hopefully
get
the
2
equipment
treasures.
gives
It's kind
evasion.
of meh. I'm not a fan
Well-
of the art here. So far I don't like the art in the set so far. I mean, it's okay
Really?
art,
Whoa.
but we got to see the showcase and
Yes,
the
these are the
special
boring
treatments.
versions.
But so far they're like tiny. Like that's my complaint, right? Like
Oh,
I'd
you
rather
wanted
have
the
like
zoom
face
in
shots.
One Piece,
I
yeah.
mean the Titus looks a lot better, but I don't know, Krim, have you seen like OP10, OP11? Like One Piece has gone up like several notches and they make the most beautiful cards you've ever seen. So when I look at this Cloud here, I'm like, it's a little sad for Cloud, but it's fine. We'll see the showcase. I want to see what the showcase treatment is for Cloud.
I mean, as a base version of this card, this is, I think you're comparing this to like One Piece's like SRs and stuff like that, right? Where this,
But the SRs are base. I'm not talking about even the alternates or the mangas, right? Like just like your crappy like commons and uncommons and rares in One Piece are still banging compared to like this.
are they? They look, they just have the basic foil.
Just check the
silver
new setup, but like the framing and how they like picture the characters and stuff like that, right? But yeah. I mean,
right
I'm down
now-
on Cloud. Cloud's one of my favorite characters. FF7 is one of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
This is kind of a mediocre commander. I mean, I guess I'm glad it's not Stormbroken, but it's kind of
Yeah.
like unexciting.
So
And it's
far,
3
both of
colors
them
too.
seem-
I don't like 3 colors. I like 2 color
Yeah.
commanders. I can't cast this. This is uncastable.
So far, both of them seem like fine power level wise. The first one, the Mardu one, I think seems pretty good. The equipment one, whatever. What about Titus, though? So Titus, it's a new Bant commander. Titus Yuna's Guardian. 3 mana, 3/3, legendary human warrior. Beginning combat on your turn, you can move a counter from target creature you control onto a second target creature you control. And then it has Cheer. Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deals combat damage to a player, you can draw a card and proliferate. Do it only once each turn. That last restriction is very weird to me. Why does it need it once per turn? Yeah, like what is that preventing? Like, so just so this is clear, if you attack multiple people, you'll still draw multiple times, right? Or does this mean it triggers in Commander if you attack 3 people? Does it only trigger once because of that?
Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on different.
I think the once each turn prevents that.
One or more. So
you think it's only one draw, even if you hit all 3
normally when
opponents?
you have a clause like this and you hit multiple players, you draw multiples, right? But I
Right.
think the once each turn makes it so it's like Welcoming Vampire, you only get 1. That is my guess.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah, that would make that clause make sense to me if that's what they're trying to prevent is people triple triggering, which I guess maybe because of the proliferate. Maybe it's very scary if you like hit each person and triple proliferate. That's actually kind of busted, right? Like, yeah, moving counters from creature to creature is like fine, whatever. But the proliferate plus draw a card seems like a pretty strong mode on this.
I first off, let's just go with the obvious here. I love the name, Yuna's Guardian. Okay, I'm just gonna cry really quick. And then I think this card is very good. It's a 3 mana 3/3. And so it's going to come down and immediately at the beginning of combat on your turn, you already get to start moving some counters around. I really dig that, especially with any, what's that land? It's a green land that also puts counters into play for things that entered this turn. But I don't know. I really like this. I think this could be busted. I could make this powerful. I think not busted, but very powerful. I'm curious to see how the cheer part works. We will need to figure out the ruling on that. I think you're right. I think we're only going to get to draw once and proliferate once. But that would be busted if it were uncapped.
Triple proliferate would be so strong.
It has to not work like that. It'd be so broken, right? I will say this is the best art we've seen so far.
I love that art. I
3.
love that art.
Yeah, I don't understand the flavor of this. The why he's +1/+1 counters, why he's cheering. I want to see Yuna. I want to see a partner.
I
with
wonder
Yuna.
if the +1/+1 counters and the cheer, right? Do you remember the old system? Like the where you'd put the little I call them boba, but the little pearls and that's how it would like kind of the talent. It's like the talent tree. What is it called? The spheres. The spheres system.
Isn't that like in every Final Fantasy, like the skill tree kind of thing that they always have? Which one was
the spheres? Were the new innovation for 10?
Was it? I don't remember because we've had so many
10
variations on the spheres. Okay,
But
I can see that.
But specifically now that makes sense because the spheres would be why you're moving 1/1 counters because you could move them on the talent tree to be like, oh well, I don't know, this character is the closest one here on the sphere chart, so we're just gonna. Oh God, I think that's why they're
actually-
moving counters.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised at these choices so far for the precons, though. Like, because on Cloud, understandable, but Terra and Titus, interesting. And then the last one.
But wait, Titus is in 10 though. 10 is huge.
But I don't know. Would you do like
What's-
Black Mage or something, like a VV or something more iconic? Or I don't know.
mean-
It's interesting.
But like 10 is a at the time, I think, if I recall, because I remember as a kid, it was just like the biggest thing we had seen from Final Fantasy so far, technologically, and then storytelling. I loved it. I'm a little bit of a sap, so I love me a good love story. And this one was a very, very moving love story, right? And then on top of that, like, I don't know. For me, I like Titus, and I don't know if it's because my brain developed a little bit more by the time I was like when 10 came out. Because like 7, I really liked, but 10 always hit harder. Although the voice acting, let's just go, didn't age all that well.
All right, we got
this
one
is
more.
the most exciting card. This is I know Krim.
Ooh.
I know Krim knows this one because we got Stola Knights Bless. So we got Final Fantasy 14 representation here.
Yo,
Esper.
you wanted a black mage?
2-4. Okay. I like the Mithra. Okay, we played Mithra. Catwoman, Cat Warlock in Magic. So Vigilance, at the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. When you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, your Stola deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life.
Wait,
Here's the Broken Commander.
This seems nuts.
This one is crazy. This one is crazy.
Is it?
Yeah,
one of each end
You just
step.
cast the spell and you dome everyone and you do it twice. You draw a card. And
It
then
is
you just
mana
hit
value
people,
3 or
you draw a
greater,
card.
though. It is
Do you
mana
remember
value 3 or
Titus
greater.
though, Seth, where it says do this only once each turn?
Yeah.
That is
yes.
the safety valve that Magic has put on a lot of cards.
That's true.
Nowhere on here does it say once per turn that if I could drain.
That is. On the other hand, though, what about Jin Gitaxias? Remember Jin Gitaxias, just like the mono blue one from March of the Machines?
The saga?
Like whenever you cast a non-creature spell, mana value 3 or greater, draw a card, and everyone like, whoa, my God, we draw a card, and then you learn that 3 or greater is actually like a restriction, right? Like how many 3 or greater spells can you actually cast in a turn cycle, realistically?
Isn't that commander so broken? We just don't play it 'cause it's too broken?
I mean, I have.
Oh, I thought y'all were
Nuts.
not playing it because it was too bad.
No, that deck is.
You like Treasure Cruise, Dig Through Time, Thwart.
There's no shortage of things
There's
to like
lots of
cheat
stuff
mana.
you can- yeah, you can cheat mana so
Also,
well.
Ward.
Remember, Fierce is 3.
Fierce
and
is
that's
3 as
three. So
All right.
yeah,
all right, maybe
like,
it's kind of
all of
busted.
those.
You might be right.
It
Also,
draws
it is in the right
cards
colors.
and gains you life and kills everyone. Like, what more do you
Yeah.
want?
Jin actually is just draw, whereas this will kill people if you chain people, like you chain off with your Stola, which I wonder if this is meant to be like big spells deck, and I like the flavor of that, right? Because if you think about it and the way a black mage would play, you stand there, you're doing your Fire 4 rotation, you're sitting there for like at least 2 years, and then finally when you launch your Fire 4, it's like, yes, everything is incinerated. I'm glad you all gave me half an hour to fire off this spell. You fool.
So do you think this is the strongest of the cycle? What would you pick as the weakest of the cycle?
As of right now, I think it's Cloud, which
Cloud
is crazy
is
to say.
Cloud would be the lowest
Bad. It's
tier.
bad. Like they should have made this the most powerful, but Cat Lady is most powerful, I think. I mean, the others are passable, but Cloud just sucks.
I think
Like,
Okay,
I think
but
Cloud
I
is,
don't know
Cloud is my
way.
bracket 1 deck, Seth. Cloud is my
No,
bracket-
it's not that. It draws cards and I don't think it. I think it would be the least powerful, but I also don't think it like downright sucks. I would say the other two are in the middle. I would put Titus and the Mardu one in the middle.
But the
Cloud at the
problem is
bottom
that
and then
Buster
Yoda
Sword
at the top.
has to be so broken, okay? Like Buster Sword has to be so broken to like work with Cloud. Otherwise, Cloud is just like so bad.
there's
draw a
there's
card.
no way these are the only appearances of I think these
Oh.
characters, by the
Well,
way, right?
I
So we
imagine
can
it's gonna be like
assume
Lord of the Rings, where we have
Yeah.
a million of each.
Oh no, we're gonna
yeah.
have like 5 Clouds. Oh no, I
Probably.
did not
There's-
This might
there's
be the
no
bad
way.
Cloud.
Gandalfs and Aragorn.
Well, we
we
wait,
have so many
unless
characters. We don't need to do this.
Well, remember, these
decks
aren't even in
aren't-
standard.
Okay,
So they
okay, that's
probably
what I was
want to
gonna
have a
ask.
standard version. These are Commander Precon cards, so not standard legal. So I imagine they at least want a standard version of. I mean, I guess I don't know how important these characters are. Maybe these are like tier 3 characters that no one cares about. But assuming these are important characters, wouldn't you think they'd have a standard version at least?
Cloud is like the Jace or the Pikachu popularity of like where he is the main character that a lot of people remember.
Wait, why'd they make
I
him
would
so
say.
bad then? Why? Now I see what Richard is saying. I didn't realize Cloud was like that important of a character, but yeah, it seems
If
like
you
they
had
gotta
to
make it
make
a little more
one
powerful.
Final Fantasy card, it would be Cloud.
Cloud would be the one.
Yes.
And then it'd be
So-
like Tifa or Aerith, I guess, for like the
Yeah,
like
like-
the other characters.
If
right?
you
But-
wanted a waifu, you would choose Tifa or Aerith, right? But Cloud is like his iconic sword. Like they invented this, you know. Like this is what mainstreamed carrying a sword bigger than yourself, you know. Like so, and then the spiky '90s hair, like we all love it, right? So yeah, but I'm excited. I mean, so far 2 of 4 cards. The art looks amazing. I could throw on Terra.
I don't know about Terra because I didn't play again, but I will say that is a Magali Y'shtola, by the way.
Yeah, that is the
That
best
is
art on a Magic card I've seen. Maybe I'm
Holy
just FF14
mother.
biased. I'm just FF14 biased, but I'm like, oh, look at the fur on her, you know, on on her robe, and like look at her finger, you know. I'm like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I missed Final. Let's go raid, Krim. Let's go.
But yeah,
I'm sad.
Goldfish raid. I would love to see Seth do the mechanics.
Oh God, yeah. No, I've never liked RPGs. They take way too long. He said as he played Civilization,
this one
but
won't take too long. I promise, Seth. We either die immediately or we. I think the art for Titus and Yuna look really good. The art for Cloud is really good. I think my problem is the card is the weakest of them all. Like look at all the costs, right? Like Y'shtola makes sense at 4, but the others are 3 mana, right? And then Cloud is 5. So you have to play this clunky commander and then equip it. Right? Which when Cloud enters, he gets to equip one thing, which is nice. But
that helps. Yeah.
All right, I am ready to use all that. So if you look at the article, you show the deck boxes, right? You know, the commander deck boxes, and
Yeah.
I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, they look so good, and I never have this reaction. I'm never like,
I know.
oh, the Assassin's Creed deck box looks great. I'm like, oh, the white deck box with Terra, and it says Final Fantasy 6 on it. They didn't even cop out and say Final Fantasy 3. They're like, just Final Fantasy 6. I'm like, oh, so good. And this art, is that the showcase
do you
art?
see
What
the
is
naming?
it? What is
Do you
the
see
art?
the names?
Yeah?
Do
yeah?
you see the names? Because I see Counter Blitz on Titus, and I'm like, yo, are you telling me we're playing Blitz Ball?
Are
The
you gonna
names
pick
are
up?
good. Limit Break for 7, Revival Trance. Oh.
Wait,
I
So
want to
here it
see this
is.
Terra alt art. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be good.
Are you-
Now that I've seen the article, it explains the counters. Titus is all about passing counters around like a ball.
Oh my
Did you
god, they
know
really went
this
all
was
Blitz
going
ball
to
on
be
this.
Yo, that's sick. Does this mean we're gonna get Strixhaven Stadium or whatever, the Mana Rock, but reskinned to be Blitzball? Because I've been saying for years that should be the case, right? And then 14's deck is called Scions and Spellcraft. If there are
Absolutely.
other Scions from 14 in that
Definitely
deck,
all the Scions in 14.
ah,
No, there's definitely. They would have just put her by herself.
yo,
Are you-
how many Lalafells are in that deck? That's what I need to know.
I
Like,
want to see
Richard-
Seth's. I want to see Seth's impression when he sees a Lalafell. Is he gonna be like,
Yeah.
"That's just loot. That's
Wait.
another loot."
Wait, is there a loot in Final Fantasy? I didn't even know that.
I mean,
I
the
can't wait
loot
for
of
this
Final
now.
Fantasy, I think, is like Chocobo. I think, to be honest,
It's
but
Mog.
they are.
It's Moogles.
Oh yeah, the Moogles. I think that's debatable, Chocobo or Moogle, but they are
So-
very cute.
So before we move on to some other Magic topics, Richard, I know you've been waiting for this set. A hype level check. Like, now that you've seen a couple cards, up, down, staying the same, like, do these cards do anything for you since I know you've been counting down the days?
10 out of 10. You know what really
10 out of
sold me? The boxes. You know, because
Uh,
you can get a sense of what the showcase style will be. Like they have like that Terra looks a million times better than the Terra on the card. So you know these are like the low rarity cards. But like give me that cloud just on a borderless card and like we're good to go, right? Like the full zoom in, the giant sword. So I am super hyped and I'm gonna go brew my Yestola deck.
Are-
Maybe
Yo, I'm
Are-
hold on,
resub to
wait a minute. We can't
FF14. This is
have
all
this
going
show.
south real quick. Okay, you know how long I spent weeding myself off that game?
oh no. Oh no, we're
no,
gonna
this
lose
is
I
Richard
didn't
bad.
for the
invite
next
Richard
6
to play
months.
with
Yeah.
me.
No,
He was
no.
no, I quit. I'm an adult now. I have a family. I can't be playing that game.
I'm gonna go watch some guides on. Can you raid with Black Mage? Are they good now?
Yeah, I
Black
mean
Mage
they,
was, like,
they were
terrible.
really good. They were really good. They were tier 1 when I was raiding. But now I think it's all about Pixel Painter or whatever.
They can't
Like,
move. They can't do mechanics. They gotta channel spells. They're basically
You
like
don't-
Terra. They trance, and then you just get wrecked, and you can't move around during a raid. Anyway,
It's
we're far
okay.
off
You
topic.
just hope your healer rescues you while you stand there and be like, no, my uptime right now. I'm not moving. I'm not
Yeah,
doing the
uptime. Gotta
mechanic.
get that fire 4
Oh.
off.
Yeah,
Well-
fire 4, baby.
I might have to play some Final Fantasy just to know what's going on.
Don't do
with
it. Our
this
whole
set,
company is gonna
We're gonna
disappear.
down the
Where are the
drain.
uploads, guys? I haven't seen a video in
Or-
like 2 months. We're
Final
world
Fantasy
first,
Goldfish
you know?
incoming.
We're world first Savage Raid. Don't worry.
All right, let's move on to another Commander topic. So last week, obviously, Commander bracket announcement. That was a big news. We talked about it on the Commander Clash podcast, which is going to be going up tomorrow. And I know Tomer did a solo video kind of explaining it. But one of the interesting aspects of this that we didn't really talk about is Wizards essentially announced that in April, they're going to be unbanning a bunch of cards, and they are going to be moving the cards they unban onto the Game Changers list, the cards that you only can play in brackets 3 or higher. You can only play 3 of them at bracket 3. But as a result of this announcement, we have seen some crazy price movement for Commander ban cards in the past week. We've seen Dockside Extortionist shot back up to 60 or 70 bucks. We saw Hull Breacher triple up in price. Mana Crypt back up pushing $200. Jewel Lotus back up near $100. And then also like Sylvan Primordials and Primeval Titans, not like shooting up to, huge prices, but also increasing in prices. What do you make of this? Like, are these people getting ahead of the curve and being geniuses by buying all these ban cards? Or are they getting their, the cart in front of the horses, they say, and are going to be disappointed once they find out that these cards aren't getting unbanned? Let's start with the 3 cards that the RC banned before the RC themselves kind of got banned and Wizards took over. Do you think those cards are coming off the ban list? Mana Crypt, Jewel Lotus, Dockside, those are the ones that are the most expensive and saw the biggest price movement this week. It seems like people are betting on that, but do you think that'll actually happen?
Okay. If I were to put this lightly, I hope they don't unban a certain patch of cards that made people like baby rage on the internet, right? I think that specifically sends a bad message. I still think you cannot unban those cards, like so Dockside, Jeweled Lotus, those ones. If you want to unban the other things, hell, you can unban. It would be even funnier if they unban Nadu. And they just left specifically Dockside and Jeweled Lotus on there. But I genuinely think you have to leave those cards on there. I don't know if I like the idea of everything coming off the ban list. There are things that there's definitely cards, we've talked about it, we did on the other podcast, that I think would be okay to unban. Right?
Yeah.
Like I think like even Coalition Victory, all this other stuff, have the time of your life, right? And if they get unbanned, they're moving into the Game Changers column, right?
Yes, from the ban list to the Game Changer list is what it sounds like.
That is at least okay. We can do this trial period thing. Hell, you can shake Commander up every 6 months by moving things in and off that Game Changers list, right? Just for the fun of it. Commander rotates. But legitimately, I'm equally easy and uneasy. because there are cards I definitely don't want to see unbanned. As I thought back to it, I used to think that Primetime can come off that list. No, no, hold on.
Yeah.
No, definitely not. And then the 4 cards that had the internet, like, like screaming and raging, I want those cards to stay on there. And then I think, and also because first and foremost, I think those cards are just bad for the game. Like Jeweled Lotus, Dockside, I think those are just bad. And other than that, though, like, is there anything else that's on that list? Because everything else is just some kind of big mana win condition. Like, okay, Biorhythm, maybe we can leave on there still. Like, that one is a little bit of a pickle, but anything else that's really all that bad?
I mean, so stuff that, oh boy, I have a few thoughts on this. So stuff that obviously I think isn't going to come off is Power 9 stuff, just because of price purposes. So I think that is likely to stay on the ban list. And then I don't know if you want like balance, fast spawn, like flash, some of like the fast combo stuff. Maybe they unban it based on the justification that, oh, it's at higher levels. But I know like flash was specifically banned because of bracket 5. It was a CDH community that really needed that card gone. So it's hard for me to imagine taking a card like that off, especially since it would most directly impact CDH, since it'll be a game changer that people aren't going to play at lower levels anyway. So there are a few cards that I think shouldn't come off, but there's also like a lot of panoptic mirrors and stuff that's like, I think especially if you're going to have rules that are like, you can't chain extra turn spells at lower levels. I don't know why Panoptic Mirror is going to be a problem if you're playing like Bracket 4 Commander. Like, it's a 5-mana artifact. It's so slow. So there's also a lot of stuff that can come off. I am fully convinced that they're going to unban those cards. I think
everything?
Not everything, but the stuff that the RC banned, the Docksided, Mana Crypts, I think Jeweled Lotuses. I think when it comes down to it, the money wins out. Like, when it comes down to it, Wizards makes a lot of money reprinting those cards. I don't think there's any principle they're standing on here other than like sell booster packs. So I would be surprised if they didn't get unbanned. Richard, you're the tiebreaker. What do you think about those three? Are they coming off or staying?
I don't know what they're going to do, but I'll tell you what they shouldn't do is they've implemented this bracket system, and so far the feelings are mixed, or like people don't know what to do about it. They don't know if they're adhering, they don't know if they're being malicious, they don't know if they're misunderstanding, etc. Right? There's a lot of confusion going on. So to take it as given and to use it to police games, I think would be a mistake. Right? So if you're like, well, we'll just unban Dockside, we'll put it in the game changer list. What if people are not following it, right? Or what if people are abusing the game changer list or whatever, right? So I don't know, like the system that hasn't been tried or true, hasn't been tested, we don't know what's going on, and they're going to use it as a justification to unban, I think is a horrible, horrible mistake. So hopefully they don't do that. And I don't know what benefit they gain from this. Like, they can just print a new broken Dockside. They don't need to unban a Dockside, right? They can just keep making broken cards if they want. Something tells me they might actually do it because, like, they need to do something. Like, it's kind of like, how Magic players, like, they have spot removal in their hand, and the first thing hits the board, they just, like, fire it off because they don't want to waste their mana. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you're tasked to, like, doing something with Commander, and you sit around and do nothing, everyone's like, what are you doing? Right? So they're spurred into action.
I mean,
but I feel there's just so much discourse going on right now, and everyone is confused. I feel doubling down on brackets this early is like super dangerous. So they need to let it shake out, play out. And if everyone actually adheres to it, then they can start doing something, but it's like way too early.
I mean, that's the risky part is, right? So if they unban these cards and put them on the Game Changers list, that is based on the assumption that most people or many people are going to be playing with the Game Changer list. If the whole thing ends up falling apart, then you have the issue that what about the people who opt out of this, which was one of the big parts of Gavin's article is like, hey, this is an optional thing. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. If you unban Primeval Titans and Mana Crypts and Docksides, they're unbanned for all the people that are opting out of this system, right? And if it ends up being that a lot of people opt out of it, or you have to change it or try something else in the future, then you end up with a big mess. And what would really, really, really make people mad is if you unban Mana Crypt that people already freaked out about because you banned Mana Crypt, and then you realize 3 months from now the bracket thing's not working out, and you ban Mana Crypt again. We're running out of people to hand off Commander to. Like, if WotC messes this up, there's no one over them to give the format to. So So
Let's just give it to the command zone or something. Just give it to Game Knights at this point. We give up.
I am very curious about like if they unban all of that, right? Just hear me out, okay? They unban the cards that they banned, and then in a few months they ban Mox Opal, like in Modern. It's almost like everything in the last couple of months never happened.
It's like it never happened. Yeah, it kind of is.
All that
It
happened
all
was
for nothing.
you got everybody upset, and then you undid everything.
Oh, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. My advice would be, and triply so now that these prices are super high, I wouldn't be going out and buying these cards right now. Like spending $50, $60, $200 on band cards seems like a wild thing to do with the current prices. So I would just wait and see what ends up happening. Don't go out and buy Mana Crypts on the off chance that they unban it. Like, it's too risky. Way too risky for me,
What
at
about
least.
$5 prime time? Should we be snapping
Five.
this up?
Okay, so I will say, honestly, if you want to pick up the cheap cards that you think could get unbanned, that's probably fine. Like, if cards are a couple bucks, like, what's the risk, really, to pick up the copies just in case they get unbanned? But I definitely, like, once it gets to $10, $20, I would be crossing it off my list. We also got one other topic I got to bring up, because we missed this one last podcast because we were busy with spoiler stuff. Wizards announced that they're making a movie. Not only are they making a movie, they're making a cinematic universe, which it cracks me up. I laugh so hard because WotC, they've been talking about movies and TV shows for like a few years now. We always get these announcements of movies and then they never happen. And it was pretty ballsy of them to be like, you know what, guys, this time we're not only making a movie, we're doing an entire cinematic universe when you haven't even put out one movie yet that you've announced 5 or 10 years ago. So they're just going for it. They are all in on being the next X-Men, I guess. What does this mean, Crib? Do you think, first off, do you think it'll happen this time? Like, they had Game Nights announce it. They're seeming pretty serious about it. Does this mean anything? Are the odds higher with this announcement that it's actually going to happen, you think?
I think the odds are higher not because like of Game Nights or anything like that. The odds are higher because Hasbro needs to have good toys and they are desperate in sales. And so because of this, they need a banger franchise, right? And then on top of that, Legendary Studios picked it up. And I just saw the trailer for the Minecraft movie like the other day watching Captain America, and I'm like, "Oh yeah. Yeah, they're going to put a Magic movie out. They're going to definitely help distribute a Magic movie." Plus they also did Detective Pikachu. So Legendary Pictures has shown that they're willing to do whatever movies as long as like whatever's out there, right? Like when it comes to nerdy franchises and IPs, because if we're going to have a Minecraft movie, why not, right? Like, why can't there be a Magic the Gathering movie, right? So,
wait, does this mean we're getting like Detective Loot then? Do you think that's the direction this movie goes?
I'm just going to say one thing, all right? There are 2 stories that I would see working in Magic, right? And have it, everyone's going to say Brothers War, all this stuff, but that those are generic. Those will come off as generic fantasy movies. And I say this, letting you know that I love the D&D movie, but I think because of just the way D&D looked, the recent one with Chris Pine and all that, which was considered a flop financially, I liked the way it was, but I think because it looks just generic fantasy, most people are like, oh, we have a lot of that already. So it just, I think they need to get around that, and the only way to get around that is, well, Phyrexians. I think you go right to Phyrexians because Phyrexians give you, I know this is not going to sound great for, the children, but it's got the horror aesthetic, right? And so you could have it look kind of like this Hellboy kind of look to it, right? And then that at least is an interesting look that helps it stand out a little bit. And also the idea of Phyrexians are just cool. Or you have Jace and Vraska's adventure together, because I think that short where they do find loot in the vault is a very well written short, and I think it is a moving short, which is rare for a lot of the stories that I read, especially in short form for Magic, for me to get so attached, right? And that's all before loot even comes along, right? Now if they decide they want to throw loot in there, sure. Like, I know this is, a lot of people are gonna like moan and grunt a little bit, but this is why I brought up Hasbro wants some selling toys and whatnot. This is going to be like their Jawas, their Ewoks for people that are around for Star Wars' launch or whatever, right? And then, same and, moving forward, right? But I think loot could be that, and if they decide, as long as they could cast Ryan Reynolds. He did Pikachu.
Wait, I thought you were playing loot, Krim. I thought we already determined. We had this covered.
I would voice loot in a heartbeat. I want to let it be known right now, Legendary. Like, if you need a guy, like I already hit all the requirements. I am so damn short that like I feel like I could just actually be in a mocap suit and then just go up there. And on top of that, I think they would have to make you loot by the wave, just kind of like that charming character, but I want him to have like the craziest, deep, or most menacing voice, and that's what I would want for loot.
You know what I want, and this isn't going to happen, but I want it to be a horror movie where Loot's like the bad guy, like the Chucky doll, and Loot, and that's yeah. See, that would be a movie I could get behind. Richard, what do you think about this?
This movie's never happening. Like, you know when the best time to release a risky Magic the Gathering movie is? When your own player base is down on your IP. When we're calling for more universes beyond, less in Magic sets. It's just bad. Like, everything you pitched is bad. Like, it's like only franchise people will watch. So it has to be an origin story. Okay? Like, you can't have these people show up and sling magic powers without explaining where the magic powers come from. Like, every superhero movie is actually, the first one is always an origin story, right? So we have to do. Yeah, but because maybe that's show up and shoot fireballs out of your hand, everyone's like, "What the hell's going on?" Right? Like, you need to somehow explain why this is plausible or whatever. And
if I'm glowing blue, do you need to know how I have magical powers? You could at least assume that, right? Like, okay, he's a magical dude, right?
I don't know. And then there needs to be some like human element to it, and Magic just lacks all of this. So I don't think it's gonna happen. I don't know what it'd be. I think it'd look cool. I watched Mufasa this weekend, which is the Lion King movie, and I'm like, it's horrible. Right? So there's like these giant lions in it, and they're like white lions. And I look at it and I'm like, that's horrible. I'm watching the Arabo movie and he looks so cool. And if they could do something like that, that could be a Johnny, I guess, or Arabo himself. But I don't know what they would do. Like, it would just be so cheesy. Just think of all of the bad superhero movies you've watched, MCU or non-MCU. Like, even the bad MCU movies, their characters are infinitely more recognizable than whatever Magic the Gathering is going to throw up there. So, and then even if you go Phyrexians, I'm like, am I just watching aliens? What am I watching here, right? Like, am I watching some kaiju show? Like, what's going on, right? Like, so I don't know. You got to distinguish yourself.
Wait, you don't? If you're telling me I'm watching Temu Aliens, I'm so down for that, right?
But so if you're watching Quiet Place 2, except it's Jason Chandra walking like, shh.
Okay, well, that's different. That's a whole different premise, right?
That's the same thing, right? You're like,
no,
where did they come from? What's going on, right?
No. Okay, I think if it is, they need to lean into the camp as well, by the way. Like, they need to lean into the camp because also I'm willing to bet the best story from Magic, like, turn movie, isn't written yet. It's nothing we've had. I think we're going to want.
I hope so.
Is something we haven't had yet. So, like, for our sake, because they got to do this right. They got to do this right.
Who's the main character? Is it Jace? Like, who is the poster person of Magic the Gathering? Is it actually Loot now? Because it used to be Jace, Chandra, Nissa, whatever, but they've like kind of been discarded. Are we like Loot? Are we like Kellen? Like who is the main character?
It's a good question. I mean, right now I think it's literally today it's Loot. Like, we just had a set.
Is it really?
Base was on like 15 cards. So I think right now I think Loot is that. Whether or not it'll be that when the movie actually comes out, which is probably years in the future if it does, like, maybe it looks very different by then. I hope it's more of like a classic storyline. I don't know. Would you like a movie that was basically the current storyline, like Jason Vraska and Loot going around the multiverse. Like, to me, that doesn't sound like a very appealing movie to watch. Not that, like, and Luke could probably be part of it. I imagine they would like to have Luke in it just because of merchandising. So, but I don't think this current storyline would be very good. I don't know. I don't know how you make a good magic movie. I think it's gonna happen, but it's gonna be bad, and that's what
It
scares me more. Like,
it
if it's
needs
gonna
to
be bad, I hope it
be
doesn't
a
happen.
banger fantasy movie that people will watch even if they know nothing about Magic the Gathering. And to
Which was
me,
the
that's
D&D movie.
Brothers War. And at the
Brothers
end,
War is
Urza
not
casts a
that.
spell, right? And then you're like, "Oh, it's mana. Oh, it's Magic the Gathering," and it ends like that, like Prometheus. It has to be something. If it's like 2 seconds in, like Jace flies in, like brainstorms or something. Chandra throws a fireball, like, "Oh, you almost got me, Jace." I'm like, "Oh my god," right? Like this is gonna be so bad if loot pops in. Like the other thing I was thinking of, like you go minions, you go like Despicable Me.
Yeah.
Fibblethip CG
Oh.
and it's all Fibble and it's some weird like comedy thing and it's just all Fibblethips or something. You go like
Oh.
super weird, but even then, I
Oh,
don't
see,
know.
that would be awesome.
I
I
think
would
it's gonna be a
watch
comedy.
Despicable Me with
I think it's got to
Flibbletips.
be a comedy. There's no way it's gonna be super serious. You gotta, right? It's gotta have like something along those lines of like the Minecraft vibes, or the Detective Pikachu vibes, Sonic, something along those lines, but with more action and magic going on in the background. And for a fact they will go and there will be a quick random scene. Jace, that he's got to be going through an Omen path, and in the middle of the Omen path, it's gonna drop him off in an LGS, and it's gonna be like, "What is this? What kind of place is this?" It's gonna be a scene like that, and then he's gonna just zip
Grim,
out
it'll
of there. Whoa!
It won't be an LGS, it'll be a GameStop because that's where
Yeah,
FNMs happen now.
Yeah, it's a 2 for 1.
Speaking of that, we gotta wrap it up in a minute. Krim, you pointed out, and I don't know how this is possible. Apparently, GameStops is running FNMs now. How in the world does a GameStop run an FNM, Krim? Do you have any ideas on that?
No, because I don't know how they every GameStop I've ever been to has never had enough
Tables and
space.
chairs. Like, where are you gonna play? Like, where are you gonna play at a GameStop?
This is like old GameStop, back when I remember GameStop did have tournaments. Like they had real quick, small gathering tournaments. I think they're trying to bring it back. And as of right now, for those that don't know, it was on February 14th. They had GameStops were hosting like an FNM, and it was for Etherdrift and all of that stuff and yada, yada, yada. Right. So I think that was like a one-off to see if they could do it. And I don't know how the results of this actually turned out. There's no way for us to find out, right? But from the outside looking in, this is hilarious. They're doing everything now, right? I joked about it, like when they said they're accepting PSAs. Now they actually are trying to be your LGS, right? They are trying to sell you singles as well. That's kind of hilariously weird. I don't know how I feel about that, right? Because, again, GameStops are tinier than most LGSs.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't know how you play there.
So I forgot if we talked about this in private or on the cast, but like GameStop becoming your LGS is like natural in my mind, right? Like they started selling sealed, then they started selling PSA slabbed cards, they started selling singles. They have all the space. They don't sell video games anymore. They're selling like Funko Pops, and you know how that's going, right? So they got to replace that with something. Yeah. So selling cards and like hosting tournaments so that you buy those cards seems like a logical step. I've played in tiny LGSs before in like a mall, and what we did was you would go to the store, you would get your pairings, and then after pairings, you would just scatter into the mall to play your match.
Go to the food court.
Go to the food court, or if there's like common seating around or whatever, you go play, and then you come back and report. It's kind of the same for like any place that doesn't have like a real LGS. So like people like held events at like bars or restaurants, right? You would just get your pairing, you'd get a table and play somewhere, right? So a little janky, but I could see that happening. They could just clear some Funko Pops and put like 5 tables there. You can host at least 10 people or something like that. But isn't this kind of exciting? Like there'd be an LGS in every mall, right? Like, isn't that kind of cool? Like, instead of driving 30 minutes to an LGS or something, like your GameStop is now an LGS, and it exists
think
already and is probably in a centrally located location. So like,
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be a positive. I'm still like, who knows how many stores actually implement it. I think it would be like you would need some amount of like structure tables or something, but I think it could open up LGSs for places that don't have them. I know like there's a GameStop way closer to me than there's a real LGS close near me. So like I could more easily go to an FNM GameStop than I could to an actual LGS GameStop. So there's probably some places where having GameStops actually have tournaments might make them more accessible to people, or might give people a chance to go, even if they didn't have a GameStop or a local game store that they could go to near them. So I think that's the biggest upside. I hope it doesn't replace local game stores and people like dump their LGS to go to GameStop. And I don't think they would, because LGSs are probably better set up for tournaments. But I think on top of the LGS system, it seems like a positive to me.
you know what the best
Yeah,
part is?
I'm curious how good that. I don't know about that actually, because if the goal for GameStop is to become your one-stop shop and all of that, I think that cannibalizes the local scene, right?
So it could, but I've just never been impressed with what GameStop has. Every time I go to games, like, I don't, do they actually have GameStops that have like real singles and like a full selection of boosters? Like, the few times I've gone to a GameStop, it's like, we have packs of one set and this random bundle from a year ago, and then like a few 50-cent cards as singles. Like, are there GameStops that are more LGS feeling? Because they don't really feel LGS-y to me, or like I could go there
Not
and like really do my Magic stuff
Singles
there.
are very rare,
not as
but
of
getting current sealed, like not booster boxes, but packs is like pretty
Okay.
reasonable. Like I imagine I could go in right now and get Etherdrift
Buy some
commander
packs if you
products,
want to.
play packs, and collector boosters. Like that
Okay.
would be reasonable.
Yeah, like I think right now they aren't there yet. They aren't setting up to be your LGS, but let's say they did and they tried. I would be a little bit. I'm curious about that. I don't know. I hope it doesn't cannibalize the local scene, obviously, right? Because I grew up in my LGS, so I love that. But
Yeah.
on top of that, I do remember, though, way back, there's this old relic for all the younger listeners that don't know about this. Toys R Us was this thing, right? And Toys R Us had Pokemon like tournaments, and you could like TCG. And I would go. My first tournament I got disqualified was at a Pokemon at Toys R
You
Us.
get Toys R Us.
Dude,
Cheating
you're only
at
allowed
Toys R
60
Us.
cards on the dot, and I brought my whole collection and I put it in a deck. So like,
Wait, and they DQ. Were
so-
you like a little kid and they DQ'd you, like tossed you out?
yeah, I mean, like, I didn't have a legal deck because not only that, I was like, why the hell would I ever play like, Squirtle when I go right to Blastoise? I had 0 of the basic Pokemon, so I have an illegal deck in 50 different ways. I have an illegal deck. So yeah, I remember those though, and Toys R Us had the space, and that was actually kind of cool because they were able to set the vibes up. You're in a Toys R Us, so it's kind of cool, like easier for like parents to take their kids to, as opposed to some random store who knows where. So the local is like the locations they could have because of it being GameStop is interesting, and
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I could see normie parents being more comfortable bringing their kid to a GameStop than like some hole in the wall LGS that they, that they don't know of or don't know the people. GameStop's a name people have heard of, right? So maybe there's some
Yeah.
level of like familiarity there that could be an upside. I mean, if you go back far enough, there were WotC stores, Wizards of the Coast actual stores in malls, but we're probably not going back to that.
So the
era.
best part of GameStop is you can pub stomp your FNMs, get store credit, and then buy a PS5.
That is
Like
yeah,
the
that is
worst
kinda
part
Yeah,
about
that-
store credit is like you just gotta buy more Magic cards, right? But now you can cash out for like a PS5, or after you get wrecked or after you wreck people with your Final Fantasy deck, you can go then buy Final Fantasy 6 and play it. So you don't get hazed on the internet. So I'm kind of down with it, but it will cannibalize LGSs. But I don't know what would happen. I don't know if they can actually do it, right? It seems expensive. I don't know. Like, because imagine it becomes an LGS. Are you going to go there to buy PS5 games now? Like, you want to go to the smelly hole in the wall with all these, like, nerds? Maybe not an appealing environment. Like, it might ruin the rest of their business. Because when you run LGS, then you gotta sell drinks, right? You gotta become a restaurant to like make the money. So
Yeah. I
don't
will
know,
say
but
that
it's certainly interesting.
the scatter to the food court system, I can't imagine that catching on as like the overall system. Like, yeah, you got to actually have tables and stuff, right? Like, I don't think I would go to an FNM that was like at a mall and then I had to go find an open table someplace in the mall to play my game and then go report back. But anyway, I think we got to wrap it up. No fish mail this week. We ran a little bit long, but Richard, next week we're going to get to fish mail. How do people send those in for the future?
All right, hit us up at MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
Anyway, that brings us to the end of episode 523 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So, Richard Cribb, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about the Pro Tour and whatever else goes on in the world of Magic. So, until then, have a great week, everyone. And this is Sakruta signing out.